Good afternoon, everyone. We're in session. We have a motion to approve the minutes from April 22nd. Do we have a second? Brian? All right, let's go.
You're trying to keep you on your toes. Second.
All right, any corrections or discussion of the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
I just like to compliment Senator Anderson on her very clear and concise and precise minutes. Here, here.
You running for re-election?
Considering it, I would do it again. We'll see. It's open if other people are really
There's a
interested.
video that has that on.
Any further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes from April 22nd, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, all right, motion passes. All right, we will not be receiving reports from the president or provost today because they have generously given their time back to try to keep us somewhat on schedule. But, obviously, Sue, you're welcome to speak at some point if you need to. All right, so next we have Marianne Gould. Marianne.
Actually, I have a question of the absent president or provost, if possible.
Well, right now we're doing the AC report, so we can, if you have a question.
One question,
Okay.
because she's here.
Okay.
Is there video available for those PLCs that were a couple weeks ago or a week ago?
We did video those.
That's what I thought.
We streamed them. I'll have to see about the video. I may be wrong. I'll check for you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll email John Stevenson.
All right, Marianne.
Okay, so I'll be really quick too. The only thing from AC is that there's a change that was brought up by Jody at commencement, even though we still have, of course, the awards for.
It was a committee. It wasn't just me.
Oh, I didn't even know you were there. I was looking for you there, and there you are. Okay, so Jody and the committee decided not to have, so we will have the awards for teaching, of course, and for service and so on, but they won't be crossing the platform anymore so that we can shorten a little bit the length of the whole ceremony. So same thing for the alumni and so forth, and so just a little heads up about that. For that, that's it. For committee on committee, do I have 30 seconds? So for the committees on committees, which is a little bit more of a problem than it's ever been because of the new wording in the new contract, the committee, Paul and Precious and I, oh, Paul's not here, the baby must be born.
Or happening.
Oh, maybe the baby's here. Anyway, his wife was expecting on Sunday. Anyway, we sent to the various people involved a message saying that, and the people involved were the professional faculty. We sent them a message explaining to them that now that service is being treated differently with promotion, that they might. We wanted to give them the option to rescind for future participation in membership. And that if they do decide to continue with it, they need to meet with their chair and then with Sue to decide how that would work as far as ALUs. So more to come on that, but for now that's where we are.
Any questions? All right. We are pleased to have Donna Lane with us. Donna is the president of IFS. We are going to be hosting the next IFS meeting coming up soon, and we also have an open seat in IFS, so we will be sending out this week a call for candidates, because we hope to hold an election and have that new person seated at the next IFS meeting. So Donna, you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, Andrew, thank you. Amy's done a wonderful job, but her term is up, and so we're looking for new members. Jessie may be able to speak. She came as a substitute, and Lee's been on IFS, so any of us can answer any questions. But what we do is just make sure that faculty's voice is reflected when it comes to educational policies. Need to be prepared to write testimony sometimes. You need to be prepared, as we all saw with the NWC, CUU, that they were going to leave academic freedom out. So that was a race for all of us to get some statements together for that. So those are the types of things we do. Sue has been very generous in funding us to go because the meetings are at a different campus. About 3 to 5 times. When it's a long session, it's usually about 5 times. And so that's been really a neat experience to go to the other campuses and hear from people and see what's going on at their campuses. Sue will introduce, along with our president and Andrew and Jean Salmon and Lee. I'm missing somebody. That's going to be introducing all the IFS members on Friday the 17th. And so meetings are usually half a day Friday from noon until 5. Oh, there's Charles. He knows everything. Meetings are from noon on Friday till noon on Saturdays. And like I said, Sue has always funded those. And it's a lot. That's the fun part. But there is some work to it. And especially when we're in a long session, it could be all of a sudden something's going on the floor and we've got to write some testimony real quick. So everybody gives feedback, and sometimes it's done virtually. We try to prepare in advance as much as we can. And we track the bills constantly as they're going through. So if anybody has any questions, we'd love to have one of you or several of you nominated, so then we can decide. And Donna,
I would just say also
I
we
just
were
want to
really
thank
close.
Donna and Amy for their service, just publicly, because they've done a great job, and they're a dynamic duo. They cover one another. They make good use of their time and travel, and also oftentimes sit in for the Provost Council meetings and other groups that are meeting in Salem and elsewhere. So they've done a great job.
I was just going to add that it's a great opportunity to kind of get the big picture of what's happening across other institutions. We also work closely with our community college partnerships. We meet often collaboratively, and with HEC as well. We work at a good partnership there as well. And the other, I'd say it's a chance to, there's a lot of subcommittees as well. So it's really, you represent Southern Oregon University in HEC and faculty in general, but we also really take on usually one additional subcommittee. So it's a hefty but really rewarding service opportunity.
yeah, one of our strings of subcommittees right now has been the student evaluation, which I'm also on the task force with Melissa. So it's great to get the feedback from our colleagues across the state to see what they're doing. So we surveyed them, we brought that piece together. We'll be presenting that in a couple of weeks, I think, right, Melissa? And so that's a great piece that we also, and then we can always say, I mean, sometimes Andrea contacts us and says, what are other universities doing about this? And so we can ask them, and so we don't always have to reinvent the wheel to see what worked and what didn't. So it's a good communication line.
And you also are automatically part of our Legislative Action Committee at SOU as part of the membership here. So.
Charles, do you have anything you can add, or?
Well, no, I don't think so. It's been an extraordinary organization for quite some time. It's sort of changed with the times. Certainly had to adjust with moving out of the old university system and moving into the modern world. A lot of very bright people doing a lot of very careful thinking there. I think you guys are right. You can have a bigger impact than what you might think, because you can come face to face with the HEC. You come face to face with not only your colleagues, but leaders in the business community. You come in contact with administrative people. You come in contact with legislators. It really's got kind of an outsized effect. And it's a pleasure for me to serve on it. I might even think about it again if I could, but I can't, so.
We can make a special conversation.
Yeah, it's great. We do have legislators that call in or visit, and we're having Pam Marshall
Marshall's
there on
running this
Saturday. And so, yeah, we've we try to invite key people in, and it's been great.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
There is a lot of fun, and just one quick thing, you can have lots of sort of sanctioned fun, and then you can have lots of unsanctioned fun. And the unsanctioned fun was when Donna and I would travel together. Everybody across the state thought we were husband and wife. So we'd show up at the hotel, and they would look at us, and they would say to Donna, I don't know why, it's always to Donna, they'd look at Donna and say, it says 2 rooms, are you sure you don't want one? And Donna would say,
Hell no. They tried to put us together on a plane. I said, I've had enough of him.
big fun.
And Lee has also been on IFS. Do you have anything to add, Lee?
I would just echo everything that's been said. Of course, I was part of IFS when we were still part of the Oregon University system. You get to meet an incredible group of people. Folks really care about the voice of IFS. It has been a connection on the HEC where it is our conduit to the faculty across the institutions on the university level. We get to hear from community colleges, private and public, and then we get to hear from IFS. And when that voice isn't represented, we often feel that disconnect to the faculty, which we don't want to have happen upstate. So I encourage you, if you're thinking about this, it's a great way to get involved. We've done some big things. We were responsible for the Oregon Transfer Module, which was a response to what we're now living with 2998. It was the first go around to try and not push common numbering, but to really wrap our heads around outcomes and transferability. And it's still alive today, so must have been good work. Yeah.
And SOU has quite a representation right now, not only myself, but Lee being on HEC, and Sue's the president of the Provost Council. So it's we're getting the word out across the state that we're doing great things here. Yeah.
We're home.
We're home. Yeah. So, any questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Donna, and I will send out a call for nominations or self-nominations this evening, and hopefully an election maybe by Friday, so that we can get a result and seat our next member on the meeting.
Great, that'd be great if they could join us on
Yes.
the 17th, 18th.
Yeah, that's what consider that if you're available to some people.
So Andrew, what's the process? People send nominations to you?
Yeah, I'm going to send out a call, and then I'll forward the nominations to you for a ballot. All right, we now have new graduate curriculum proposals for discussion, and these are the big folder full of new courses. Do you have anyone from graduate council speaking with this?
Well, that'll be me, but we also have some folks from the program, I think. Hi. Yes, so I would defer to my colleagues unless there's specific questions about how the committee process went. But these were all, discussed, vetted, unanimous vote, all the things you could expect from a committee.
Any questions about any of the proposed new courses?
Can you review which courses we're looking at?
It's all the courses in the folder, new changes to graduate curriculum discussion only, and the folder as the subfolder of the 5-6 agenda.
Just one quick clarification. There are 3 new concentrations, new courses, 2 course modifications, and then catalog changes of cleanup. This was work that we started about 2 years ago in our redesign of graduate programs, starting with our outcomes and moving from there. So it's a girthy group.
Yeah.
The folder I have, what I was sent, I have, they're all course proposals except for, I have one email, Amy, from you to the committee. I don't have any,
Yeah, the concentrations that was the material that came forward last week, the
Right,
last
okay.
meeting.
those
So
are for
those are
today.
actual action items today. So that what's coming forward today is just courses and some catalog copy.
Oh,
It's all ED and then ECE.
We do, those are,
There's a whole bunch.
There's
yes.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, but well,
So we're reviewing the item, the new courses and new changes to graduate curriculum discussion only. That's for vote in 2 weeks. And then separately, we will talk about the changes to graduate curriculum, parentheses, possible vote, which were introduced 2 weeks ago. And that has the concentration.
Oh, okay.
was-
My apologies.
That's
I got
that's
confused.
the really big one.
Thank you.
So the other one isn't pretty significant also.
Okay, so for clarification, maybe you can just clarify. So
Okay.
all the new courses that were in that folder, as far as I can tell, all had to do with the online courses. Is that correct? They were all,
Here's the list.
yeah,
yeah,
it's
let
a
me,
big long list. So those were all courses?
yes, those are all proposed as online.
Right, and so some of those were for new courses for adult learning, and so my question is adult learning, is that a new?
It's a new
Area.
concentration.
See, that's, okay, so that's a new concentration. And then the other ones were, for example, ed, do you know the numbers, 575, 574? Those are like trends and issues in environmental ed.
So that's a new concentration, curriculum and instruction in STEM education.
Okay, so those did not exist before at all?
Correct.
So those are not the courses that Stuart James used to teach?
No.
Okay, and all of those courses in there were all online, so these are all with that academic partnership, is that correct?
Yes.
Because they're all 7-week and also online, so I
Yes.
assume that's what that.
Yes.
Okay. And can I ask the second question? So I think, if I recall, reading through them, there were no new, who was teaching the courses were all graduate faculty in education. And some of them were new hires, 2 new hires?
We have 2 new hires. John knows more about that, but we have 2 new hires coming in that were hired that will be part of their loading.
So the online courses are part of their loading.
Yes.
Are they teaching within education also?
Yes.
And then it said something about 2 retiring faculty were going to be kept on as part of their, so I was confused about that because I thought we didn't do teach outs anymore, but I could be wrong. So what is that?
Yeah. So Ronnie Adams is our current graduate programs chair, and she does it, as part of her tenure relinquishment, does have a post-tenure,
Post-retirement.
post-retirement
post-retirement.
appointment at halftime for 2 quarters over the course of 3 years. And one of her courses will be in that contract is to teach within this program.
So after she does her part-time, does that mean the program needs new faculty?
Yeah, I mean, we'll be searching to replace her during that 3-year window anyways.
So, okay, so since provost is here, do we have money to search for new faculty in the next, I mean, I just can't look in the future, but everything I hear is no new faculty or limited replacement. So is that for growth? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, we're intending on replacing, the 3-year window provides us kind of that
That little,
wiggle room to build the program, make sure that it's sustainable and growing and viable, and then replace her, and we'll have the majority of her teaching load, regardless, is in our licensure programs, and so there'll be that continuing need.
Any additional questions on the new materials introduced today that we will not be up for a vote until 2 more weeks? All right, moving on to the materials from 2 weeks ago. There were also graduate curriculum proposals. Again, I'm not sure why these got separated, but these include courses and also the actual the curriculum, the new concentrations in education that we were just talking about. So do we have a motion for those proposed changes?
So moved.
All right, Charles first, Lori seconds. Any discussion of the proposed graduate curriculum changes introduced on the 22nd? All those in favor of approving the graduate curriculum proposals, please indicate so by raising your hand. Any opposed? I don't think so. Any abstentions I missed?
No.
All right. Yes. All right, the motion passes, thank you. All right, we have, do we have a motion to approve the university studies proposals that were introduced on April 22nd?
Move to approve the university studies.
All right, Lori moves to approve.
Second.
Right. Carol, seconds. Any further discussion on the university studies proposals from April 22nd? Dennis, were you able to get your?
I was able to reach out to the faculty listed there, and although they didn't give me a revision, they assured me, and I reached out to Lee as well, and Gail Vidmar, that they understand where I'm coming from, and I expect they will perhaps take some recommendation. But I'm happy with their, the way they presented the course and their assignments matching the objectives, but it just wasn't fully in the course description, so I think they took my point. I was happy.
I did have a question for the English course, but I don't see the faculty member present. Anybody from the University Studies Committee here? Yeah, could you clarify for me, so this is the rhetoric English
Yes.
writing one? Intermediate topics in rhetoric. And it's, so I'm kind of confused, it says environmental writing topic approved, so is that the same thing? It says repeatable with different topics. And so I didn't understand that,
Yeah.
because it's an H strand, which I was trying to figure out what about it was H strand.
Sure. So English has a couple of different topics courses, and the way they're approved is they come through, and it's the particular title that gets approved. Unlike the comm courses, which list A, B, C, and D, English will approve by the title of the course, and it'll be tied to the number, but they can apply for other topics to come under this umbrella, which then again would come to you for approval.
Oh,
And so this, it would be just this particular course under this particular title to be approved, but it's going to be an umbrella piece. We're hoping to work with English to give them some other distinguishing factors so we don't keep going after the title. It gets a little confusing for degree works.
So are we approving those intermediate topics in rhetoric or environmental writing?
On its face, yep, just this course.
Just the environmental
this
writing version.
Environmental writing.
Yes.
Just the writing, okay. So can you explain to me, because I forgot to look at the stuff in your meeting folder, which I appreciate you put out there, but why is it integrations H strand? I'm just trying to get my head around it.
Sure.
I'm not doubting that you went through the process and everything, but.
So it's the combination of how it's going into science, technology, and society, and giving students an experience to see how those particular pieces are interdisciplinary. And so much like we've seen with some of the writing courses that come up under English, there's the topics that will lend itself to the readings and the discipline and the growth. And then that aspect of the integration allows them to clearly be seen as not standalones, but as they come together, how they complement each other in a workable environment. So are you still struggling with
I'm
it?
still struggling with the, so I assume then that it was just, you know, how you have to say it's primary or secondary.
Oh, yeah.
So-
And the template's in the folder if you
Okay,
want to see what it is that they're looking
Goal
at.
1 and Goal 3 are primary.
Okay.
They listed as primary.
And
we're
goal
finding apply.
one was,
Goal 1 for an H strand is the different, understand how scientific inquiry works as a method of discovery. So students should be able to distinguish between scientific and other explanations for phenomena, compare and contrast methodologies used to compile evidence for constructing arguments and drawing conclusions. So they listed that as primary, and then refine and apply, and then goal 3 is recognize ethical dilemmas in scientific inquiry, methods, and technology. Students will be able to analyze consequences of technological and scientific change on the individual, society, and environment, examine how scientific and technological solutions to societal problems interact with belief systems and worldviews, and evaluate how scientific and technological perspectives inform our understanding of societal problems.
So they get the lens of society through that first aspect, and then they get the application through the lens of the third. Thank you.
Carol? Or no,
Any further discussion of the proposed university studies courses? All those in favor of the motion to approve? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes. All right, we're moving along. Next up, we have the proposed change to faculty bylaw 1.312 that was introduced on April 22nd. Do we have a motion to approve? Kimball?
That's the whole time.
Even though I know who you are, I still see the sign. Brian, in a second. Any further discussion, Brian?
I've got just a more global question on bylaws changes. When we approve these bylaw changes, when does the Senate know whether or not our recommendation has been approved?
So so I sign the change, and it goes to both Sue and Linda, who sign off and send that back to me, and then we discovered we have to do the actual revision to the PDF, and then Chad uploads the PDF. And so I guess I can let you know.
Yeah, because I mean,
Takes a while.
okay, because we've made a few changes to the bylaws in general, with more changes on the way and being discussed
Right.
later today. So I'm just wondering, because the only access that I have to the bylaws are on the Senate website,
Right.
and so
We've
they're
been
obsolete immediately once we make a recommendation, once it's approved. So I would like to print them out and always have them, but then that's also even more obsolete than the website. So I was just wondering, generally speaking, when do we know if they've been accepted or approved?
Well, I will say there's a slight point of confusion early on, because I didn't realize, I thought it was Patrick who updated the bylaws, and then I found out, oh no, we actually have to update our own bylaws, which makes sense. And so there was a long time when we were approving things and they weren't getting published. It wasn't the Sue and Linda were signing them, they just weren't getting published. So we recently published several changes. So I think we can move a little more quickly now. So I certainly expect that they'll get up by the end of the term.
But to his question though, it would be nice to know, like for all faculty to know that these bylaws then now have been updated
Right.
and they could check. Is that kind of what you're more
Yeah,
concerned
that, and I don't know if there's anything on the website where it might have like a little date stamp where it says updated, 5/6/2019, where I would
Chad, do
know.
you think that's?
That would be easy to,
Okay. All right, well, I'll make a point that next time I forward the changes ready to Chad, I will, once he tells me they're up, I'll send that, I'll back the email, and we'll make sure that it's taken.
okay. So now that that can of worms has been unscrewed, I'd like to tear it open a little further. Sorry for my bad. I was discovering the other day that I really could not see the history of our bylaws, and I don't want to see it week by week, but it would be nice to know every, say, 3 to 5 years, have them up on some kind of archive. Now, maybe I just don't know where to look, but, I mean, I'm also very involved in APSU. We've got every contract we've ever had up on our website back in the 70s. It seems to me it would be a useful project for the university to have it, whatever, every 5 years,
So,
every year, some version of the bylaw.
how do you envision that? Because with the CBA, once it's ratified, then you have
It's
it.
final, yeah.
Right, with this is constantly new changes, so.
Well, we certainly could, like, for
Try,
instance,
like,
at the start of next year, or the fall term, the Senate chair, whoever that might be, could certainly download what is then the updated bylaws and put them in the same Google Drive folder to archive them at that time. So we at least have, at the start of every year, we know what they were at that time. And then we could publish them somewhere else as an archive. So I think we could do that going forward. I don't know what to do about the past, so I have no idea what's happened.
Okay, I mean, I'm a dinosaur. We used to always print these damn things up.
Yeah, like this?
Yeah, one of those. But my point is, even if we put all kinds of caveats on it, like this was current as of what date as far as we know, or whatever, just having the history would be, I think, helpful to, so I'm recommending we look into archiving something.
Kimball, the last time the CBA things were archived, it was done by librarians, it was done by.
Was in my hand.
Yeah. So, and that was really helpful. It was Jim Ribel, I think, that did it for the CBAs, going way back.
Right.
So I agree with you
Right,
that
well,
you need to refer back to what they said, because sometimes we change things backwards. You go, oh, look at this great idea.
Right.
Oh, we did that in 1962 or something, but.
The chair recognizes the secretary.
As representative senator from the library, I was going to say that we have university archives with all kinds of university documents in them. We also have electronic archives, and I could definitely talk to Mary Jane, who's in charge of that, and see if like we can kind of establish a process for making sure that's always happening. I think it very well may be that there is a bunch of stuff already archived, but I don't know because that's not my area.
Right.
But we could definitely establish a more kind of official, ongoing process too.
Love both those thoughts. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the revision to 1.312?
Well, I have a question. I wrote part of this, and I just stuck in that no later than the first week of May. So I thought I would get some feedback from people. Is that a doable date? And that was with the discussion of we don't have enough time if you try to seat new people.
I think it's going to have to be even earlier than that.
That's what I'm wondering.
So maybe we should leave the date out of it.
So before it said, you know, the first Senate meeting, or the last Senate meeting this spring. What do you think? So
think it
this
might have
is
to
about
be
committee
earlier in
appointments
May,
for the following academic year will be solicited no later than, and I made that up, so.
I think ideally the 5th week of the term would give enough time.
5th week of spring term? So, I think that Karen was saying that that's going to be too late though. Because people who volunteer for committees need to then put in requests.
Because of that issue, yeah.
And then and that has to be before they work with their chair on the
That would be
course.
just instructors or those with service loading changes.
Right.
That could be an idea.
But it could,
That's 50 people, I think.
well, if you look at how many this year we're serving on committees, it's a fact. And they have to put in those requests before they work out who's teaching what the following year. So,
It's more complicated.
So two thoughts here. I mean, first of all, on the one hand, by saying no later than the first week of May, that doesn't prohibit us from putting it out on
Earlier.
January 1st or whatever.
right.
That said, whatever's here is what future people will follow, and they'll think, okay,
It has to be done.
by the first, yeah, certainly doesn't have to be done in April. You know. So, I mean, I think there's advantages to this, but I'll just point out that if we do decide we want to put something different there, then we're backing up our process
Yeah.
by 7 whatever days and all that,
Yeah.
because then it has to be published to the university and all that. So,
I
our choice.
just wanted to point out I made up the date, so, and nobody said anything.
So I heard that we will blame Brian Fedora for any future problems with that date.
Any other discussion on this? All those in favor of approving the revision to 1.312, please indicate so by raising. With, no, we didn't.
No, we didn't change it.
We didn't change it. You always fix it next week and republish it.
Oh, yeah.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Brian's opposed.
Chad, did you abstain?
No, I go for it too.
Okay.
Wait for
Try to raise your hand.
I'm putting dates in right now, so should be all updated.
Okay, so the motion passes. All right, next up, we have a proposed revision to bylaw 5.351 that was introduced on April 22nd. Do we have a motion to approve? Campbell approved the motion?
I approve.
Yeah. That's fine. Do we have a second? No?
Oh, Precious?
I heard Precious.
I saw
Okay. Good. Any further discussion?
I consulted with my colleagues and they want to know if there is going to be any extra work for the adjuncts or term by terms in this evaluation process. Whereas adjuncts and term by terms work lots of hours and don't get paid very much, they were concerned about would they be asked to put together a binder, fabulous stuff that they've done. What, they want to make sure there's no extra work for the adjuncts. And they want to know what is the review process, and when would the review happen, 3rd week, 5th week, and who would be the reviewer?
We consulted with our colleagues in the School of Ed, and this caused great consternation, partially because we rely very heavily on adjunct faculty, professionals from the field who teach a great number of our courses. At a rough estimate, we're looking at between 45 and 50 adjuncts a year. If field supervisors are included, if they're not, it's between 35 and 40 because there is overlap. Field supervisors often also teach a course. So if they are considered faculty, if they're not, and that's a significant load for our chairs. And even if somehow it is parsed out to coordinators, it's a significant load for coordinators. And some of that is unavoidable because in our licensure programs, people with specific specialties and who hold specific licenses must be the people who teach the courses according to our licensing body's OARs. So we can't, in certain circumstances, just fold that into the department. We can in certain cases, but not in many. We have to have someone with a math license and teach math. That's a bad example because that one happens on campus. But in certain subject areas or in our administrative program for administrative licensure. So over the course of a year, and in addition to that, many of those adjunct faculty are hired at a distance because we have satellite programs on the coast and in Klamath, and we're really trying to be responsive to the needs of communities for teachers and administrators. We're trying to make sure that those teachers don't have to uproot and move here to become teachers in all cases, which means that we hire expert faculty in those regions, which also makes supervising and evaluating those adjunct faculty a significant burden in certain cases if we're having to drive to Coos Bay or Klamath to do that. So it's, it would mean a big sea change for the School of Ed.
Jessica, can I ask, are any of these faculty who are hired, do you have any record of, I guess, visual record of their teaching before they're hired? I mean, do they have a teaching demonstration of some kind?
It varies a little bit. Sometimes we know them because they're recently retired educators. So we may have been in their classrooms supervising ourselves and seen them teach, so we don't ask them for a recommendation. Quite often it comes through a process of them approaching us and saying, I'm not ready to retire yet, here's my resume, and then we go through a process of interviewing them and bring them on board. Now we have observed as coordinators, we try very hard to get into as many classes as we can and observe those adjunct faculty in a more informal way, and I know that there is, oh, John left, no, John's still here. The chairs do sign off on some of those and do some observations as well. But again, with the ones who are further afield, only teach maybe once a year, and then somebody else comes in. It's quite a bit. Yeah.
Jesse, you were saying about 50 a year, roughly?
Yeah, it could be as many as 50. I would say if we don't count field supervisors, and I'm not sure whether they would be in that definition of who gets observed, it could be between 35 and 40. If we do count field supervisors, it's between 35 and 45.
Are those all new every year? Or?
No, some of them repeat every year. So it wouldn't necessarily be 50 every year, but there is a significant turnover. Because if we lean on recently retired people quite a bit, and after a few years they're ready to really retire. So, you know, we do see quite a bit of turnover in that. Or they get full-time jobs in some other context, or, so I don't have a number for the turnover, but it's a good chunk every year.
Any other observations or thoughts?
So it doesn't say in the proposed bylaws change that they need to be evaluated by a chair. So, I mean, I don't know if, and I'm not trying to say, but is there somebody in ed, or if there's an outside body, if we just left it as they need to be evaluated within the first year, you know, first year, it says here first term, but, I mean, this is, I think the rationale for the bylaws, I agree with. I mean, if we're really looking for student interest, making sure that our adjuncts are doing what we hope that what our normal loaded faculty can't do, and they help pick, I mean, we would want strong teachers, so I'm just wondering if there's a way that there can be, that they're evaluated somehow for their pedagogy.
And I think that's in many cases what we have done informally as coordinators. You know, I have, in my program that I coordinate, I have a couple of adjunct faculty teaching for the first time this year, and one who we've brought back after a gap. So I've been sitting in on those classes occasionally and watching them teach and writing up a little narrative, which I give to our chair. But that's also, you know, I'm unlikely to drive to Coos Bay to do that, and it becomes a significant load on coordinators as well. But I agree with you, in concept, I support it.
Can I follow up? So who would evaluate the people in Coos Bay? Is there somebody in Coos Bay that could do it, or?
Well, our coordinator who coordinates the satellites could potentially do it when she does visit Coos Bay or via video. But again, you know, we're stretched pretty darn thin, which is why we have so many adjuncts.
So I kind of want to just support what I think I'm saying.
Me.
And that is that I really do agree that we should have evaluation. I also want, I think there's by what it doesn't say, there's a lot of flexibility at least implied here, and I would think we should all just acknowledge that flexibility needs to be needed. I mean, I certainly think we shouldn't build an onerous process for either us or for the adjunct. I mean, I don't think asking the adjunct maybe to reply, taking an hour of their time to some questions, have, you know, maybe you have some sort of student feedback, whatever, something that is relatively painless is an unreasonable thing to do, because if you have a disaster for an adjunct, that hurts our institution, it hurts our students, it hurts our reputation going forward. To me, it's a problem that's worth spending some energy fixing on. I understand it's a lot easier when they're teaching here. We can go look at them in their second week or third week or whatever, but I think the concept here is sound.
I might be reading into your comment, Campbell, but maybe there's flexibility in the term evaluation.
You are not reading it.
I'm not.
That is correct.
That's right. So the term evaluation could be a face-to-face observation, a formal observation. It could be a telephone interview. It could be follow-up of reading their student evaluations. Right?
Yeah, all that.
But Andrea, you stated this right up front, if they're distant, could you do like a Zoom thing, just have them connect up so that somebody can at least see some, you know, especially if they know they're going to be evaluated, and it's not evaluated in a bad sense, it's like just to make sure everybody's on track and they're all comfortable and they might have questions, but, and that would be not very invasive, if you could just set up a little camera so that somebody from some distance could just say, oh, you know, they did that well, they outlined their learning objectives, whatever you're looking for.
I think it's less about it being invasive or feasible or desirable, because I agree that it's desirable, and more it's the who.
Right. Who is the other end?
Who is doing that evaluation and the load on their time when we're talking potentially 50. And maybe only 25
But
is
not
in a year.
50 every year, which is what Melissa was getting at. A lot of these people are not new, so you wouldn't keep, I don't think.
Jesse, do you have an idea of how many you had new, first-time, term-by-term teachers, not counting the
supervisors? I can say in my program alone, 2, 3, 6 this year. And I'll probably have roughly that next year. And that's just me, that's just the secondary ed.
I know I've had conversations with my advisees, for instance, who have complained about a teacher who's an adjunct, and have said, well, has anyone seen him teach? my answer's been, well, actually, no.
Yeah.
None of us have seen them, which is kind of a uncomfortable conversation to have with the student.
And that's my concern about the flexibility that I think, Campbell, I agree with you in principle, but I also worry about equity in there. That if we say, well, some people are evaluated by just looking at their student events. Some people are evaluated via brief Zoom thing. Some people, we have a long conversation, an in-person, it feels like equity-wise, that could be sticky.
Yeah, I just want to add that we don't have evaluations because this claims to have it done in the first term, so we wouldn't even have that.
I mean, I was literally envisioning,
Like a check-in?
like, yeah, the midpoint student eval that's developed for those kinds of situations, because I think, picture yourself as a student out in Coos-Bay where things aren't going well, theoretically. You don't know who to talk to, you don't know where you go. And if you had kind of a check-in, how are things going, it made clear what it was for and everything, then that's something that's relatively painless for us to administer, gives more immediate feedback, possibility of correction, all that. I wasn't talking about regular student evals.
Any further discussion? So we do have a motion on the table. Because before we do anything else, we'd have to vote on that, right? So, all in favor of the motion on the table, please indicate so by raising your hand. Keep your hand up.
I'm gonna do it one more time.
All those opposed to the motion, please indicate so by raising your hand. Any abstentions? All right, well, the motion passes, but I think these are great points that we should look at closely and maybe consider some further discussion about whether this could use some more language.
And how it maybe could be operationalized.
Yep. Thank you for raising this point.
Is it appropriate for me just to offer a recommendation around that? And oftentimes when we have these mandates come down from the state in our licensure programs, one of the ways they build that flexibility in is to require programs to share back to them, how is our plan, what's our plan, instead of saying, here's how you do it, to leave it to us to say, here's how we're going to be able to meet the spirit and intent of that mandate. So I think, the creativity coming from the program standpoint, as opposed to trying to come up with a one-size-fits-all approach across the board might be workable in this case.
And this, evaluation has a very strict connotation, so, I mean, in a generic sense, it's just providing feedback.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're already providing feedback for many of these new hires, so I mean, I would consider that to be an evaluation, those that you are seemingly doing in load or apart. So I mean, that would be some feedback for the new individual, so we call it evaluation in the bylaws, but I would just consider it, as you would say, probably just some feedback.
I'm going to move on to the next agenda item. We have the proposed FPAR task force charge. I believe the FPAR task force charge, I don't think there were any proposed changes to that, if I'm remembering correctly. There were some changes to the next item, but that language is in there, and I believe it's all the same as the language the 2 weeks ago. So would anyone like to make a motion to approve the charge?
To approve.
Do you have a second? Jesse? Any further discussion on the charge as written?
So it says the faculty senate will appoint 3 faculty members. Don't you want, so do you mean by that you're looking for volunteers from all faculty? Yes. Is that correct? Is that the intent? So you would put out a call for faculty interested in serving?
discussion? All those in favor of approving the task force charge for the FR task force, please indicate so by raising your hand.
Okay.
Any opposed to the motion? No abstentions? All right, the motion passes. All right, now this one, the next item was the post-tenure / promotion review task force. And there were a couple of changes to that based on feedback from Senate last time. And also, so one was to indicate that this is not only tenure, but also post-promotion, so those on the professional track. And also added a bullet to, bullet number 2 is added to draw out the point that there had been some discussion in earlier conversations around this topic about whether, specifically about whether the Senate should adopt different standards of evaluation for those who are promoting versus those who are promoted. So I sort of made that a little more explicit as a topic of consideration. So do we have a motion to approve the task force charge for post-tenure promotion review task force? Sure.
Okay, I have the same question.
I'll second
All
it.
right. We have a second. Yeah, we have discussion. Yeah.
So again, this will go out to all faculty as a potential task force to serve on, correct?
Yes, I will say both Kimball and Dennis have volunteered
That's what I thought.
to serve. And so, if I suppose if someone in the Senate is dying to jump in as the third person, we could do that. But otherwise, I'll send it out to everyone.
And so what if you get 16 people that say they want to be on the task
I'll
force?
take the one I like best.
That's right.
Well, I mean, technically, the assignment of it goes to on committees. Technically, it's
I'll pick one.
Mary Ann's process. I think it'd be the same process as when she seeks out calls for other committees. So I think it's pretty much the first person to come forward, unless there's a reason that they can't, shouldn't be in that role. Like if they aren't promoted or tenured, because it specifically says we want people who've already gone through that process.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It'd be nice to have like a wide range of people in different stages of their career here rather than all in one particular stage. So. Just a thought.
Specifically, this membership says, I wrote it as 3 tenured and/or promoted faculty members.
So they are, yeah.
Because it's specifically affecting those faculty members. I mean, we could consider a
But I thought you said
revision.
promoting versus promoted. So I thought you were considering people that weren't promoted yet. Is that correct? Did I misunderstand?
My understanding, and I may have misunderstood the intention of what the concern of faculty was, that this would be for faculty who are promoted and don't really have anywhere else to go, because we have evaluation procedures and processes for people who are still trying to get to some point. But if they've either have chosen they're not going to promote, or if they've promoted as much as they can, what are the evaluation standards for those faculty? That was my understanding.
Okay.
But I might have misread.
If we change those, though, doesn't that affect everybody?
Well, that's the question of number 2, right? Is that?
Right.
Oh, well, yes. So. I mean, if you want to change it, change it.
And another comment, I think you said this last time, I just wanted clarification that when we all went back to our different faculty and we got their feedback on both of these things, I think I asked you, should we, once the task force are formed,
Pass it on to them.
pass it, once those are established, then we pass those
Yeah.
forward.
That's my intention. So I would send another sort of reminder to senators saying, please discuss this with your faculty, board meeting, if you'd like to share with that task force, I'll pass it on. And as a reminder, this task force isn't responsible for making any decisions. They will come back to Senate to make recommendations. My reason for choosing the membership the way it is I did think that the most seasoned faculty would have the best perspective on how this affects, sure, this will affect me someday, but I don't know how yet.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense to me to choose those who are a little further along.
Is there tradition that task force have 3 individuals?
No, I kept it small only because, one, there's a lot of people asking different faculty to be on different things right now. And so we're stretched on service. And 2, that I thought getting 3 people in a room to talk is going to be easier than getting 7 people in a room to talk.
I mean, it certainly would be easier, but I mean, I think Carol brings up a good point, is it may have implications for a lot of people, so maybe it won't fill at 5, but I don't know if I mean, Dennis and Kimball are already on it. There's 2/3 of the committee with like 1 more faculty member, first come, first serve on there. And so I trust Dennis and Kimball, as you called them seasoned. And that's fine. Well cured. And so, I mean, this is just for discussion, but I mean, do you think it would also be beneficial to have more? I don't know. Anybody?
I have no
Three's
strong
good.
opinion. I threw 3 in there. No one said anything last week. If you want to change it, we can change it.
So could you say minimum of 3? At least 3?
I would, we could
A friendly little
a friendly
amendment?
amendment.
Yeah.
Did I move this? That's friendly, yeah.
Yeah, you should, no.
All right, so
I imagine there's going to be some faculty member that are really wanting to at least put an opinion forward.
do we want to put 3 to something, because Marianne raises the issue of what if we get 50 volunteers?
Which is not very likely.
That's Senate.
Where do you start?
We can't even fill the Senate.
Yeah.
3 to 7. 3 to 7.
Well, I haven't spoken with Kimball about this yet, but I'm sure that we would be fair to everyone's opinions about this. So, I mean, it isn't as if they wouldn't have an opportunity to voice their opinion in an interview of some kind. Survey,
Well, just like the FPAR committee, everybody's opinions will be sent to the task force.
Yeah. I mean, but,
I mean, not yet on this committee, but I agree with Dennis that one of our first things to do might be to really make a call for input from everybody, almost an informal survey. Maybe a formal survey, but anyway, some way to give us feedback, number 1. Number 2, in terms of honoring Brian's suggestion, I'd kind of like just adding at least 3, and then, our chair can make a wide decision. You've already thought exactly how I would have thought. The more people are on there, the harder it is to get them together and all that. So, yeah, I mean, if you think, wow, there's a dynamic 7, and that's great, we'll go with 7. No, let's kind of keep it at 5. To give you the
Okay. Well, I have inserted the language at least 3.
Yeah, I view that as a friendly amendment.
It's been amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the post-tenure promotion review task force with the friendly amendment of at least 3 members, please indicate so by raising your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, next up, we have a new proposals for bylaws changes. These came forward from, one set of changes from the Academic Policies Committee, and then some related changes in some ways requested on behalf of the SSCs. Those are the student success coordinators who have replaced the old advising system. And basically those changes were to replace outdated language that indicated ex officio membership on various committees for the old advising structure. So basically it was a request on their part to add the student success coordinators to a number of committees. David, do you want to say anything about the request that was in here?
APC,
Yes.
Academic Policies?
Yeah.
Sure. So we meet twice a month, and numerous occasions that we've met so far this academic year, we haven't had enough people to make a quorum. and it's kind of difficult to kind of go through the process of putting forward material to Senate if we can't even make a decision because we don't have enough people in the room. And additionally, the things that we talk about in APC are varied, so they range a lot, and it seems like it would be a much better approach to have at least one person or one representative from each of the 8 divisions, so 7 plus the library, just so that we get a more rounded representation of where these issues might land, in terms of might land in the library, might land here, might have an impact on things that we, if we're just 3 or 4 of us, might not recognize. And so that's why we put this language forward.
Any questions about any of these proposed changes?
I just have a general question.
Sure.
Do the student success coordinators feel like they have time in their schedule to serve on committees?
I can't speak to that, I have no idea. I know ours is really, really busy.
Right.
But I don't know everybody else's schedule, but, we're not saying that they're forced to be on there, but we certainly want to invite them, so that they can have that, representation on there, as same with the, the student, member, so.
And again, just to clarify, that part of the request came directly from the student success coordinators themselves.
Yeah.
They all,
I think it's a great
They all
idea.
got together and said, we're not on these committees, but there's this other language on most of them. There's, I think, 1 or 2 that didn't have any advising role, but we'd love to be a part of that.
I think it's a great idea. I know our student success coordinator is really great and would give great input back to the university.
So do you have any input on that?
No, I mean, I think that they generally appreciate being included and engaged. I think they feel like it's good use of their time because they're getting to stay ahead of some of the things that APC and, some of the other groups are talking about, so.
So just to clarify, right now it's just 6 members. Right?
Correct, right, and it's not division specific, so it's just any 6, any 6 that Mary Ann chooses. And so, 4 times already this academic year, we haven't had enough to have a quorum. But we still meet and talk about issues, but we can't really make any decisions and bring things forward or move things along because we don't have the ability to officially make any decisions about things.
Any further discussion? All right, well, these changes will come back in 2 weeks. So if anything else comes up, please let me know and we can forward the questions to the relevant parties. All right. Okay, so we're almost on that. All right, so that brings us to kind of a topic of discussion that we brought up for a brief amount of time 2 weeks ago, where I alerted you to the issue brought forward by the healthcare administration faculty, where they had requested a chair election, which sort of sent us to the bylaws for clarification, since as of yet we haven't had a request for an election for a unit that didn't already have a chair. And that sort of raised all kinds of interesting issues and conversations, and I think it's been a very fruitful dialogue. But I think one of the things that has become clear is that the bylaws aren't clear and need to be, especially with regard to interdisciplinary programs. So I did invite the healthcare administration faculty here today, and we're going to sort of speak from their own perspective about why this was a significant issue and maybe some recommendations that they have for Senate. So I don't know, did you all decide amongst yourself who's going to speak first, or?
All right. I feel like I'm hiding back here. Is it okay if I stand up?
Sure.
Okay. So I actually have with me, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to hand things out that weren't already given to people. Is that all right? So I thought it might be helpful. So we had previously written up what we understood to be what we'd identified as the interim co-chair duties that we need immediately addressed and sort of running by someone, whether through a full chair's election or not. And then we were told that we want to make sure that we can line them up with the bylaws. So we have some cheat sheets here just so you all can see the kinds of duties that we're thinking about and the sorts of things that go along with creating a new program, particularly one that's interdisciplinary, at its beginning stages anyway. Yeah. Oh, that would be really small, so, yeah, okay.
We only made 10 copies though,
We-
sorry.
There were 2 pages, so there you go. Yeah, we can always make more. We didn't want to overdo it. There were still trees outside though, so that's good. All right. And so I don't know specifically how you want me to focus my comments, but the healthcare administration faculty have actually come together and been doing some, I think, really productive work collaboratively. We have a very strong understanding of what we have to offer and the kinds of directions that as a program we should be going so that we can serve the larger population in Southern Oregon and really make SOU's program very distinctive. And we're very comfortable with that. And we need some curricular changes. There's a lot of work that has to be done now that we really know who we are. So for the first year and a half or so, we sort of got thrown together, and we, at this point, have done a lot of work to understand what we're doing to create this burgeoning structure. And what we want is the ability to actually do the work that we now have identified as necessary so that we can establish the guidelines. We have in mind to establish some bylaws that will allow us to function more clearly as an interdisciplinary program so that we can oversee our curriculum development within our program and then take it to you all. This would allow us to, to really have sort of some internal cohesion. We definitely will have unique advising needs that are not the same as the advising needs that are sort of handled by individual regular disciplines or programs that we normally have on campus. As they are interdisciplinary, they require a lot of flexibility, but also those kinds of interdisciplinary programs have very specific ways of combining requirements and ways to advise their students, depending on what kind of interdisciplinary focus that program has. So in our case, there's going to be community internships that we need somebody working on that's not going to be the work of a chair or a co-chair, for example. We're focused on making sure the curricular work is happening, that the organization of faculty members from all across campus that we are utilizing within our program can be coordinated, that we are identifying the individual faculty members that can actually serve the program with curricular work, et cetera. And so there's a lot of stuff, and I've also, as having been an interim co-chair for gender, sexuality, and women's studies for a short time, I've had the opportunity to see how one interdisciplinary program really works well. I've also been on that council for a very long time. And so the council is separate from the program, but being involved in that program allowed me to see how one interdisciplinary program can really function. And of course, they didn't for the longest time even have a full-time faculty member. And so the coordination of all the faculty that are teaching courses for that program is a very large amount of work. Also making sure that all the curriculum happens when there's no one potentially dedicated specifically there, or a very few number of people who are very dedicated just to doing that work is also important. And so what we have in front of us here, you all potentially can share if there's not enough, I apologize. We had initially taken what was available to us for some of the duties that were understood to be needing to be taken care of. And we separated out those that appeared to us to be administrative or work that an individual working within the community would be doing, marketing, for example, setting up the sort of local internships with, cultivating connections with people on the ground in different healthcare facilities, for example. And that's a lot of work, but it's very different from the sort of work that we established as separate on the co-chair's duties. And what you will see is that we have here a cheat sheet for the chair's duties based on the bylaws. And the numbers on the interim HCA co-chair duties that we have here are mapped onto those bylaws. And conversely, the bylaws letters are mapped back onto this. So you can see how these things connect directly. And you can see that there's quite a bit of work, particularly in the next year or so to be done, and then to sort of get that grounded as a program so that it can move forward in a reasonable kind of coherent way. So that's what we have here. Did you want me to say anything particular about something else?
Well, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we discussed, we met, was it last week? I can't remember.
Yeah.
My understanding as leaving that meeting is that at this time, the faculty volunteered to defer the vote for the election of a chair until next year. Is that still
So
correct?
we have, I think, corresponded a little bit since that time, because we were sort of presented with that option as as a new thing. We definitely are certain that we want to have a full election for our co-chair, or for chair or co-chair, at least by the end of next year.
Right.
But we do need faculty leadership in the coming year. And if it makes more sense to appoint program coordinators from the faculty who are interim, who are labeled interim, to perform those duties that are both chair and particular to next year, then that I think is completely fine with us. We don't need to have a full election this coming year, but we do need from within faculty to have some leadership to accomplish these specific sorts of tasks and to work as a representative of the program.
So, Devorah, just clarification. So you're looking to elect a chair from the faculty that are already part of the interdisciplinary program? Is that accurate or no?
Well, that is what we would like to do moving forward, yeah.
So elected chair from within, which makes sense because they're all involved now. So, so I'm not really sure what the dispute is. I guess it's like, sounds reasonable because it's a new program. Obviously, that wasn't put in place initially, but so is there a problem in terms of people having enough time because they all have their own departments that they're part of? So was that some of the issue, or was it an issue of, and you can correct me, I'm just speaking about newer faculty, they were all fairly new faculty on campus?
So we have both of those issues.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of work, preparatory work that needs to happen next year in particular, just to get everything grounded and going. But also there's an opportunity for us to, in a careful and reasonable sort of meter, go forward and get everybody involved and clear on what they need to do, especially since we have so many new faculty. But yes, so we have a little bit of that. And also we're going to be hiring next year for a position. And that position we are hoping to hire someone who can provide support occasionally for other of the faculty who are part of that interdisciplinary program. But we'll also be, we're hoping at the junior level to just get used to teaching in the classes. We're going to be hiring for specific classes that none of us can teach. So that person, and so we don't expect that person to come in and be chair immediately.
Right.
But instead to share those duties.
And that person is, that's the tenure track position.
Yeah.
So how many faculty are we talking about in that program? Because I don't really know. 5, 7? 7.
Yeah.
Okay. So I still don't know what the issue was. So
Of those 7, how many have been hired within the last 2 years?
I think 6 of them.
6?
I think so.
Well, Craig, so 5. Yeah, 5.
And each one of them obviously
has a parent.
Has a parent, or they're also teaching at other
Parthenogenesis
programs. Okay. So just out of curiosity, how does GSW, as it is GSWS, right?
Yes.
How does that work? Because Kylan is chair, right?
Yes.
And he's also in.
He's program coordinator.
Program coordinator. So I mean, is that the same? Would healthcare administration need a program coordinator or a chair?
Big one. So I think that it seems like we all like the idea of having chairs in the future, but for the interim, in the
You could
next
have a
year,
coordinator.
a coordinator would be fine. And the idea would be that that person would be appointed, and then the faculty would confirm that that person or those people were acceptable to the faculty, as it's stated in the bylaws.
Mark, do you have
Well, I've raised this many times, but never to Devorah directly. We've got 38 majors in this program. Do we have any other departments that have a chair with 38 majors?
Well, so we have at least one program that has a program coordinator with no majors. We also actually have 2 more programs that are chaired and then coordinated. I'm not sure if NAS is a coordinator or a chair, but neither of those programs actually have majors.
So why couldn't this program be joined up to somebody else to be something and HCF?
So I don't think any of us have a problem with that. The only reason why we wouldn't do that is because there are a lot of very particular needs that our program has that it's not clear that any of the other chairs would be able to actually provide the expertise needed.
We can learn it, we can teach it.
I mean, I would say that of our core courses, each one is in a different department. There's no clear department that we could suddenly go to their chair and say, could you be our chair?
Part of your issue is somebody to send curricular stuff to, so you need a chair to sign things, so, go ahead, Kim.
Well, I just want to respond to the 38 number, because I don't know why that seems so incredibly small. View it as a program that's going to have twice that many in 2 years, even if they don't grow, because they've only had less than 2 years to build. So, you know, the student number doesn't really move me as don't need or do need. I actually think in these kinds of programs, you're generally going to have fewer students relative to a normal, whatever that is, program, and a lot more work by the coordinator, because you have faculty in different programs, you need to call meetings with those people, you need different kinds of input. So the number alone doesn't move me. I think.
But they started with 50 and now they're down to 38.
I don't know how to respond to that either. I mean,
Projected 50.
I mean, the other thing to keep in mind here, well, there's lots of issues here, but mainly I think that it's worth considering having faculty leadership of the program, because that's what's in the bylaws, and I think faculty should be involved in curriculum. And I'm not, you know, I think there's a need for this. Is my bottom line feeling, and so I don't understand. I'm on the elections committee. This started from us saying, okay, let's run an election, and then we took it forward, and I haven't heard from the provost directly, but I understand from the advisory council that some of these things were discussed and some possible concerns. Well, okay, maybe we live with a year delay for an actual coordinator or chair, but let's figure out how this gets done moving forward.
I can respond directly. I didn't have concerns about the proposal at all. I think it's a good idea, it makes sense to me.
Okay.
I just didn't know what the person would be doing, so this is really helpful because it wasn't clear to me based on the bylaws, just the read of the bylaws, what this position would be doing. So I was trying to find something that was comparable. This is really helpful, and it gives me a better blueprint and a better schematic to kind of see where that would land. So I see the need for leadership and understand the argument.
Yeah, cool.
And I guess since half of us are here, but I think I can speak for all of us and say that we all would like leadership as, you know, part of the HCA, interdisciplinary faculty. We do feel a need for it, just in terms of the way, it's a great program, but, you know, just going through this year, we do need some structure.
A couple other things that came up in our discussion that related to how, you know, things you might consider in the bylaws, right, is I mean, this is going to come up again. We know it will come up again because we're going to have more interdisciplinary programs and other new kinds of programs that might not immediately get a chair, and someone at some point says we need a chair. So the bylaws don't say anything about when there is a chair or isn't a chair. It just says, you know, how you elect a chair. So we might consider, do we want to put our own language about when a program gets a chair? You know, you all brought up the point about, you know, because you're interdisciplinary, you said something about, you know, would be able to have rotating chairs as opposed to a 3-year term, because it might actually make more sense for you not to be locked into the 3-year term, but be able to have people come in, so that we don't have that flexibility yet. I guess someone could resign and you could, you know, but maybe there's a way that we can make that cleaner for an interdisciplinary program. So those are a couple of things that I think for Senate that are relevant for us to consider is, you know, obviously there's some people will raise questions about, well, do they need a chair, or do they all have chairs in their own programs, or, you know, what are these responsibilities? So making that a little clearer will make the next program not have to come to Senate and say, oh, here's the reason why we need to do this. So I think you all have been really helpful to all of us, I think, in giving us some input. Dennis, what's the question?
Is there a coordinator now for the HCA?
Not a faculty coordinator. There's Craig. Yeah.
Craig is the coordinator.
Right.
Is the coordinator now serving the chair duties?
So
some of them maybe?
So that's one of the issues I think that came up. That was a point of confusion, right? Is that Craig's title is currently program coordinator, but that title was sort of assigned because it was a title that sounded sort of right, but it's not. It doesn't actually match the description of a program coordinator in the bylaws, which is basically a chair junior in a way, right?
I have it if you want me to read it.
Right, if you want to read it.
Program coordinator is a faculty member assigned to a program to oversee curriculum, faculty evaluations, and other matters where the expertise of a faculty member within the program is critical to its success.
Right, so, you know, as an example, I've been made program coordinator for the new digital cinema major, even though Eric Palmer is the chair of communication, is still the chair overseeing, that. So, it made sense in that case. So that's a different thing than what Craig is doing. So he's not doing those responsibilities. And those are the responsibilities of a chair or a faculty program coordinator. So that's one of the issues. And that's not to say that Craig's not doing important things, and that role is important. It's just a different role.
Okay, my second question is, you have, you're either asking for or describing a co-chair. Who's the other?
So Larry, who is actually teaching right now, at the moment, so what we're suggesting is for next year that we have an appointed interim chair, coordinator, whatever. But the two that we have in mind to appoint are Larry and me. Larry has been here, this is his second year? Second year, and I don't know, how long have I been here? Long enough that I have tenure. I don't remember how many years I've been here, but that's okay. So the two of us, though, that way we would not be taking too much away from our home programs, etc.
So would two people share these duties?
Yes.
That would-
And then moving forward, having the flexibility potentially to have co-chairs would be lovely. But we can work on that next year, and of course, we're happy to work with Senate to maybe to assist development.
How many departments are represented in your program?
One for each of us, so 7.
That
Oh,
include-
sorry, 6,
are
because
you
we
in
have
a
2
department?
SOAM folks.
Yeah.
What
Health and
department?
PD.
Health and PD, okay. That's part of it also?
Yeah.
The group? Okay. Thank you.
I have a procedural question, and I maybe move, but can we approve or I guess maybe not even approve, I'm not sure if we get to approve. Can we put forward their election without a change to the bylaws? Or would we have to change the bylaws first before their
To
election?
have an election?
Yeah.
Well, do you want to respond to that?
Well, for this interim situation that they're describing, the division director can appoint an interim chair upon consultation with the faculty. So that, I think, could take care of the interim situation. But then,
But for an actual formal election?
Well, I don't think we need to change the bylaws to have an election. I think my first concern when it was asked was, if we simply run an election, am I gonna get called by Sue and John and say, that's not how the unit is organized, and that's not, there isn't a chair allotted for this. So there were questions about, is that just something we can do? But certainly, I think we can run an election short of, if Sue's
I
just
don't
said she
know if what
supports.
Brian read had anything about elections in it for the program coordinator, I suspect
I
it
was,
doesn't.
I was just reading what
Yeah.
Yeah, prior
definition
to
of
that,
it
yeah,
was.
they-
So
they're
the
not
process,
elected.
typically, I think, program coordinators have been
Appointed,
appointed,
yes.
historically.
Right.
So, I think that could happen. I just want to say that there's a interesting conversation to be had around this as we move into more interdisciplinary work. And I would just encourage us to do it properly and with a lot of deliberation and thought, which I'm sure we would all do, of course, because it is what we do. I would just put that out there.
So there really is no action item for Senate today. This was to bring forward this conversation that we are going to have to keep having for a while. And I think everyone in HCA is happy with the immediate result, and I think we have a more or less game plan for next year for you all.
just looking forward, if the program grows a lot, and you've got a lot of people teaching one class here, once in a while, it might get more complicated deciding who's eligible to be chair, who votes for the chair. It's really clear in a typical program who's eligible, but just going down, if it grows a lot, it could get more complicated.
And that goes to things that we would need to put in the bylaws too, is that, is if you teach one class, is that now eligible to vote or to be chair, or is it,
I'm not questioning the complexity of what you're doing here, but who's doing all these things now?
Well, I don't think we're doing assessment.
I mean,
There's a lot of
This is only
work
the
that,
second year.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, there is a lot of things here that are relevant to what you're actually doing, I'm sure. is it just sort of like whoever has the time, or whoever needs to make the phone calls, or
So
receive the phone calls, or
some of the tasks.
is it Craig mostly?
So Craig is trying to field a lot of those tasks, and some of the tasks are not really moving through at the pace that they need to, and there's some other things that are going on. But and then also, so Craig is fielding some of the things that we also need to have sort of a different structure for fielding it potentially. And so Craig's doing like, I mean, he's working really hard. And but we still have all these things that are not potentially moving in the direction that they need to go. And some of the curricular changes, for example, really need to be happening. We want a prefix. We need to get that going. There are a lot of changes. So there are a lot of just changes to numbering, and there's a lot of things that we have written up that so they haven't really happened, actually.
Okay.
A lot of that.
So to get to Sue's point, the provost appoints a program director, the chair, which you don't have, appoints program coordinators according to the bylaws, so. Good luck.
I think you can figure it out.
All right, well, on that point, thank you all for coming in. We are 5 minutes to our normal close time, but I did sort of let you all know that we were possibly going to go a little late today. So if there's no objection, if no one has anything else to say on this particular topic today, I do want to go ahead and invite Greg up to give his presentation. And also a correction, I incorrectly assumed this was a presentation on the Tuition Advisory Council. Greg is going to be presenting on budget issues related to tuition, but not the tuition proposal yet.
Correct, because we're not there yet. We're getting closer.
So anyone who does need to go, you're certainly welcome to, but I know Senator did request this presentation, so.
Yeah, let's see if I can get technology straight. Oh, wait, let's look at that. Oh, there we go. Okay, super. So I appreciate the invite. Thank you very much. We've done probably 6 open forums across the campus to various audiences. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to stop in here. So I've got some charts and I will blaze through them. There's a couple of visual aids that may help the understanding or your ability to ask questions. Thank you very much. That's well done. So let me just, this will be a little fun, but that's, well, left, right? It's all good. So I don't think I got enough corn. I appreciate the offer though. So ideally, state funding goes up, tuition goes down, student debt goes down, right? That's the ideal condition. And the fact of the matter is, it's not a reality. Across the nation, we're seeing states defund or fund higher ed less, and that's a problem, right? Are you with me? Okay, all right. Booyah. There you go. So this graphically depicts the nature of that shift. So you can see tracking the green line being the state funding and the purple line being the student tuition, that it's flipped.
Greg, is this national or is this Oregon?
This is Oregon.
Okay.
Great question, thanks, Brian. Slash Kemmel. I not fully appreciate the humor earlier on who's who.
That was all Carol. That was all Carol, by the way.
It's too bad that Brian left.
I know.
What's up with that?
Carol's left.
Hey, where does this stand nationally, though? Are we close?
No, we're on the. We were number 49 out of 50 nationally. We've gradually crept up in the pack, but we're not even at the midpoint. I don't think.
Only because of it.
No, we're
Number
worse.
38.
38. Thank you.
38 special.
There you go. So the mantra.
Hang on, Lucy.
So this is the mantra,
We didn't
right?
keep up.
High tech, stop the shift, stop the shift, stop the shift. That's the mantra. So that is Exhibit A. So the rest of this is some budget basics. And I'm not going to dwell on this, but the point of this chart was that in the current year of execution, we're very operational. As we move into next year and the following year in the planning, we get more strategic in nature. That's the only point of that chart. This is just to show you what's to come. I want to talk a little bit about expense, a little bit about revenue. So this is just a primer. And so let's build out the
expense side of this. 83% of what we spend is on the labor side. As you guys know, 3 types of labor, and that this component is an additive 56%. So if you had a faculty member at a 50K salary, add 58% to that, so call it 28 grand to that 50, and the real cost is 78K. So a huge piece of it, and you'll see later in a chart that the retirement side of that is escalating sharply. So I got a graphic that'll bring that to light. Okay, this is just really intended to give you what the public university funding, the whole pie, looks like. Most of what we get is this 737 mil, so the number to stick in your head is 737, like the airplane, right? Been crashing, bad, 737, all right? That's the number. We get a teeny bit of sports lottery money. You get about 400,000 in sports lottery. We get about 200,000 in the ETSF, Environmental Engineering Technology Sport Fund. So 737. The only point of this chart is it flows from the legislators to us through this machine, which is the student success and completion model. That model, by the way, disfavors us. So we are not benefiting from that model, but we're working to fix it. So, all right, red, revenue, purple, expense, good, 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 bad, bad, bad. That's the point of this chart, is that we were upside down a couple of years, right, where we had more expense than we had revenue. And you guys, anybody that's been here for a while, and some of you have, you guys all know this, right? So the good part to me is that these last 5 years have been positive, so that's a good thing. So we want to keep it a good thing. So a lot of the focus was to give context to where we are into the data. And so on the revenue side, since the state's doing this, then the tuition and fee dollars have to go up, right? Give me a...
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Very
Make
good.
them bounce.
We're not
All right.
happy about that.
Nor am I. Nor am I. So here's another pie chart for you. This is about 100 million in revenue that we get. Most of it is right here. This 56% in this red box, tuition and fees, state appropriations, other revenue. This is the education in general fund. So the primary mission, what you do, comes out of this chunk right here. It's about 61 million-ish, okay? Just in the other, auxiliaries and some of the other pieces of the pie are really not the focus of this, per se. Check. So 56%, about 60 million, and the magic. All right, this is not magic. This is dog crap. This is the governor's recommended budget. It's not dog crap, it's the governor's recommended budget. It smells like that, right? So, is this a safe space for me to say that? I could get worse. So these criteria, we're going to dice it up a little bit here. So the criteria shown come from a letter that Ben Cannon, Ben's the director of the HEC. He did an analysis of the investment budget versus the base budget. The investment budget added 120 million, so there's that 737. So what was the other number? 737, right? So this is flat. So the governor's recommended budget was flat. Is flat good or bad? Bad. Oh, you guys are good. So as you look at how that flat budget affects these other elements of what it takes for us to operate effectively, it sucks, right? Okay, give me a right. All right, so the Ways and Means co-chairs put out a budget that adds 40 million to that. Now 40 is better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick, but it's not what we wanted, which was 120 million, okay? So this is better, but it's not what we want it to be. And we could talk about this in more detail, but I know I'm what's standing between you and leaving. So, PERS. I mentioned before that retirement was one of those escalating costs. Okay, so from 2010, small number, to 2018, this shows the expense per year for PERS. So I know many of you are highly qualified to do math. Do you prefer the slope of this line or the slope of that line? Oh, wait a minute. So that's not good. That's not good year over year. That is the slope of that line is not good. And in the next year, and I've already just a second.
Is that just for SOU PERS costs?
This is
or is that
just
state?
SOU, just SOU. And our future liability in PERS is 30 million. That's our future liability. So that's what we pay into. So we pay into a pool, and then that's allocated out to those who retire by tier. Okay? So the next year, the point's up here. I would love it to be out here. It's up here. So that escalation in the next biennium is 1.5 million. So we have to account for that somehow. And so if we can't get more state funding, then it could be an increase in tuition. Yes?
I would just add that the HEC recommended $186 million above the PUSF that would allow for innovation and cover first costs on each of the campuses. The presidents came in and said, but if you give us 120, we can mine the gap and we won't have to go into big tuition increases. The governor says we're giving you nothing, and the Ways and Means Committee says we'll give you something, and that's the 40.5. But that's a little bit of history.
Yeah, that's fair. Thank
So,
you.
just so you know.
Thank you. And I would have loved to have seen support for that 186 million.
Me too.
We were one of a few universities that said that provided line item detail for the 66 million that would have flowed. And it would have been really focused on access programs, improving equity, underserved students, et cetera, et cetera. Would have given us great ability to do some fun things. So, all right, cost drivers. So two quick charts. So this shows you by category, these 5 categories, the projected cost escalation in each. So salaries about $1 million, medical a chunk, but medical held pretty solid this year. Not good, not as good in retirements. The number here to stick in your brain is 2.3.
So all those are increases over previous bienniums? What are those?
Those are, thank you, those are projected cost increases in the next fiscal year compared. So here's this year, these are the dollars you saw in the previous chart.
Right.
So that's an FY20 projection based on what we know. And then this just shows you the relative percentages totaling to 3.8%. So,
okay.
All right, does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks. So that gives you context on what's driving this. Okay. So this got a little better. We were at about 5.85. This number was, so this is 600K to the good based on the Ways and Means 40 million. Our allocation of that is pretty thin, it's like 2 million. But that helps us in the first year of the biennia. So we got a swing of about, I don't know, 900,000-ish to the good. And this number was at about 5.8 million in the hole. So we're less in the hole than we were gonna be. What I haven't talked a lot about, but I'll touch on in a minute, is the projected deficit from the current fiscal year. What do you think is driving the decrease in revenue this year? Bingo, lower enrollment. Yeah, so we projected enrollment to be up 2.5. It was down 4, so really down 6.5 points from what we had modeled. So, and that initially was about a $5 million gap, and we've clawed some of that back in various ways. But yeah, that's absolutely the problem. I had a full head of hair when I started here. And anyway, this is just another depiction of cost, and this has got to build out, sorry. All right, so that just puts that number in front of you again. So if what do you think our ability to control these costs is? Or another way to say that is, what do you think our discretionary spending is?
Few cents on the dollar.
Very few. It's 7 cents on the dollar, which is sad. sad. 7 cents on the dollar. So how do we work the revenue side? New students, right? And keeping the ones that we have. That's it. And you guys and the faculty overall are who really help us enable this, right? It's keeping who we have and getting them through to graduation. So normally, my compadre, Neil, Wolf closest to the sled, Wolf would brief this chart, but he's not here, so I'm gonna. This just shows you the downturn in enrollment that we saw. And it gives you by new freshmen, transfers, and continuing students. So just some data for you to see that. The good news, and there's an updated version of this, applications are down, but confirmations are up. So this is good.
The latest confirmed numbers are 709 from last year and 864 for this year.
Yeah, so and thank you, appreciate that, Andrew. So we really hope that these confirmations stay ahead and that we actually matriculate, these new students and bring them in. That would be awesome. Yes,
What are
Mark?
you projecting? It doesn't seem like we do very well at projecting, but what is the projection enrollment for next year?
So it depends on who you talk to.
You.
So what I've heard from the latest data from Chris, I think was -0.8 was the
Compared to
projection.
this fall? So we'll be
Yes.
down
Right.
a percent.
Right.
That's
right.
the projection.
That's the projection. Yeah. So to take this back to the TAC and the tuition setting process, when we bring the TAC together again on Wednesday, we're going to recommend a model enrollment at -1 as a conservative. And we also are going to recommend that they model funding at 80 million instead of 40, because we're getting some insider information that there may be some support to drive a little higher dollar value in the budget. So we'll see. Go ahead.
So on an earlier slide, when you had a machine and the gears, and you said that SOU is not set up to really take advantage of our funding model. Can you be a little bit more specific of how that doesn't help us?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
who does it help?
It helps OSU, U of O, OIT, not U of O so much, they're getting,
this time around.
yeah, U of O's getting hammered lately. So the model's in 3 parts. Outcomes is 49%, so think graduation. Activity is another chunk, and then mission differentiation is the 3rd chunk. So the model gives favor to, or more heavily weights, engineers, nurses, STEM. So, for example, an engineer will get, weighted at 2.0, and a liberal arts, English, or criminal justice will be 1.0 or 1.1. So, given our composition in the liberal arts, we're disadvantaged because the model heavily favors those STEM engineering and then medical fields. So that's the biggest thing that gets in the way. The other part is it penalizes transfers. So transfers are penalized. It's a 0.67 factor instead of 1.0, and so we actually lose some.
So those that transfer here, once they matriculate, we don't get a full student, we get
correct
2/3 of a student.
Exactly. So,
Excellent.
Or not.
Well,
I appreciate the sarcasm.
Thank you.
I share that. Was there another?
My concern got addressed.
Okay.
Where's PSU sit in this whole scenario?
They have good days and bad days. I saw a chart, and I think they sliced the statistics depending on how they want to tell the story. At PSU, I've seen some data that shows that they do well within the model, but they were spinning the yarn a little different way in what I saw a couple of weeks back. So I'm not really sure how to answer that question.
Yeah, I don't know anybody really is sure how to answer that.
Why is it being different that counts? I mean, the liberal arts are what people have said everybody needs. Why do we penalize the institutions that do what everybody needs?
That's exactly the point, Paul, that we're going to bubble up as we work to redefine the model this year. So the model's been in effect for 5 to 6 years. They built in a review cycle. So the people that are doing well with the model, they don't want to change it. The people that aren't doing well want to change it. And so
But there's a what is really best, not just what's people want.
Oh, sure. Well, I agree, and the problem is that when the model was built 6 years ago, the state said what we value as engineers and the medical profession. And so that's what they weighted heavily in the model. So now what we need to do is turn that and say, we've seen recent data that says that what employers value is the skills that makes humans human, which would be us, right? So that's what we want. We need to pump up the volume on that.
Greg, we're pretty much out of time. Can you give us?
I'm pretty much out of slides.
Can you give us a quick indication of what's the current thinking around where you think we're going to land on the tuition advice and what kind of cuts might we be looking at? Based on you just said the -1 and
Right.
80. So
Right.
what do you think
gives us? Yeah, so based on a scenario where we get 80 million from additive from the state, have a -1 enrollment data point, we're looking at nominally a 12% tuition hike, which would be what we went in with 2 years ago, right? So we're looking at about 12%, and associated with that is about $1 million in cuts, which we think we can work through easier than, something more austere. So for example, holding vacant positions vacant, maybe a 10% cut in supplies and services will probably get us to $1 million. Right? We get above $1 million and life just gets uglier. So we think, about $1 million in cuts, about 12% in tuition bump, and then it accounts for a subtle increase in remissions that would help those students who have unmet financial need to get those needs met. And so there's an offset that we bake into that. And so if we got more money from the state, we could drive that down to 9 or 7%. If we got less money, then we need to either increase tuition or increase the cuts.
So that represents an optimistic, hopefully we'll see the 80 versus the 40.5, which is where we're kind of sitted right now. We've got a forecast coming out next week, a revenue forecast that will help with them making that decision. If the decision doesn't go as optimistic as you're hoping with the 80 million, what is SOU looking at?
If it stays at 40, what we would probably do is dial up and this is Linda's call,
Yeah.
so this is not my call. We're helping advise the Tuition Advisory Council, who recommends to the president, who recommends to the board. So it's the board's approval, it's the president's recommendation. I imagine that we would increase cuts to keep tuition in that 12% range, is what I imagine. And that could be 2.5, 3 million. We'll have to see. It's not an easy task for the TAC as they deliberate, and Lisa sits on those. So I appreciate you asking.
All right, well,
And how we help and how you guys help is really it's the continued advocacy for support from the state, and then obviously Andrew, in your role as Sabrina, reaches out to say, hey, need you to come talk to the board. Certainly you can offer the faculty's perspective on how this scenario impacts your ability to do your
thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
For the sake of the amount of time we said we'd stay, we're going to go ahead and adjourn. But if anyone does have, go walk this way.
Question before you finish. How many more meetings do we have?
1, 2.
Because those proposals
Yes.
have been discussed before we end.
Sorry, say that again?
Do you have new changes to the programs that we can ask them?
No, we discussed everything today.
Did you see the president said the Southern Oregon Consortium, the fourth president,
No, we also discussed the new.
The president's got together a voting op-ed
We did.
yesterday.
I see it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah?
It's about.
So they're on the document.
Quick announcement.
Quick announcement, I'd like you to take one of these flyers, they're kind of small, I apologize for that, but in the bottom right corner, it mentions a language roundtable that will take place during SOAR, and we would love it if you could send your students our way. It's at 12:30 on Tuesday of SOAR week, and we really want to change the mentality on campus about language learning. So, thank you, please grab one of those.
And LNAP is this week, and we're doing a special workshop on oral presentation, so right before SOAR.
What time will that be at?
8 to 10.
In the lobby or main area?
There'll be signs, but it's gonna be in 113.
So Christina
Thank
was
you
talking
all.
about her